Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hot Mess Podcast. I'm your host, John Fay, with Allison Silbovsky and Jordan Ezel. We are a podcast by students for students. We are all Temple University students in the communication field. And this podcast is for students and just people in general who are looking for a perspective from students, from communications people. We give advice on getting internships, jobs, how to build a portfolio. And every couple episodes, we try to talk about what's going on in the news. And we have a lot of stuff going on in the news. The first bit of news that we wanted to share for all of our fellow Klein students at Temple University, they're already aware of this, but there might not be, we might have some people from other colleges watching. One of our professors, Bryan Monroe, passed away the other day at the age of 55 at his house in Maryland. He taught a class at Temple University called Journalism, Law, and Ethics, and I think he taught one or two other classes as well. I personally had him last spring semester, and his class really just changed my perspective on how to look at journalism and the legal aspects of it. So he was a great professor, and he's going to be very much missed by everybody at Klein and at Temple. He, for those of you who don't know who he had a very long-spanning career in political journalism and journalism in general. He was the chief editor of CNN Politics for a very long time. He was also the head of Ebony and Jet magazines for a very long time. He did the first interview with then President Barack Obama after he took office, and he did the last interview with Michael Jackson before he passed away. His career is just very long spanning, and I hope that he's remembered for his work in the journalistic field, because he's done, I think we all have a handful of, at Temple, we're very lucky. We have a handful of teachers who've really worked in the field for a very long time, especially in the communications field. Mm-hmm. And it's always great just hearing about their careers, about their stories. And I think he's a great example of that. Did either of you ever interact with him at all?
No, unfortunately, I haven't. Most of my experience, since I'm in the grad program, I really only know a few professors from Klein and then a few professors from Fox, but you're not the only person that's come to me and talked highly about him. So it's just a really, really sad thing to hear that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't really know many of the journalism professors, but I know my friends who are journalism students. They have talked highly about him, and he will be surely very much missed, and I hope his legacy is remembered and everything.
He was one of those teachers that he was just so natural with how he went about teaching his class. Last spring, right as everything with COVID was happening, and about halfway through the semester, we all had to transition to an online format. He did that very easily, and that I'll always remember that spring semester. It was my second semester at Temple after I transferred, and it was my favorite semester so far. Along with Brian's class, I took a bunch of other classes that really just shaped the way I look at journalism and really changed the way that I look at interviewing, conducting interviews, writing articles. And his class, which was about law and ethics in journalism, was really eye-opening. And he was just a phenomenal teacher. And I was extremely sad when Dean Boardman sent out the initial email informing everybody about it, which I think we were some of the first people to find out about it, because it didn't show up in the news until much later that day. So that was fresh news to Temple students.
Right.
It's always upsetting when, I've had other professors who passed away a few years ago after I had actually had them, and it's always sad, but it's right after you have somebody, it's really he followed me on Instagram, like he liked my posts, we interacted with each other after the class. He was a really nice guy, and it's very sad how he passed away. So I hope that everybody remembers him for his journalistic work and everything that he's done in the fields, because he really was able to bring that to his students. And I've been hearing nothing but great anecdotes about the guy, which I have some which I'm going to save for the end of the show.
And he
Yeah.
wasn't just an amazing amazing like professor, but in the journalist world he was very big in the journalist world.
He was
So
extremely respected. I mean, he ran CNN Politics. He was their main editor for a very long time. And he also worked, I mentioned that he had done the first interview with Barack Obama. He had actually worked with his campaign during his first run for president. So he knew the Obama family very well. And I'll save more of the anecdotes for the for the end of the show, but he was like sharing like how he like still knew Obama, and like after he had not been president any longer. And he knew Joe Biden as well. So it is pretty sad that he didn't get to actually see him be president, and he was, just shy of seeing that. So it's very unfortunate, but I hope that he gets. I've been seeing things like CNN, a couple other news outlets have been saying things about him the last couple of days since the news came out. So it's nice that he's getting the respect that he deserves.
very much.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're dedicating this episode to him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I am too. Uh, very eye-opening class I took with him, and it wasn't just one of those things where I've heard from so many people, like, after the class ended, he stayed in contact with people, and I didn't stay in like significant contact with him, to be quite honest. Like we weren't emailing each other, but it was like little interactions, like mostly like over social media. Like we started following each other. He was always like liking posts of mine that related to to like my journalistic work, or even like my personal stuff, pictures of me with my family or my girlfriend. And it was just he seemed like a very approachable, really nice guy. And it's one of those things where it kind of like separates, like, I think some people think of journalists as being very other, like, and I think even unfortunately some big time journalists think that way, where they're like, oh, we are the journalists and we inform, like they're in the stratosphere of like a borderline celebrity, where I didn't get that with him at all. He was just a guy who was in that field, and very, very much in that field, and very respected by fellow journalists, but he was just a very down to earth, very nice guy. Like I never got a like air of superiority from him that you might get from some other journalists that you meet. Not saying anything about anybody specific, but I think some people think of journalists, especially mainstream journalists, as being kind of other. There was no barrier with him. I talked to him after class multiple times about assignments. He gave me really good feedback on things. He would clarify things about law in the class that I was taking with him. So it's just when you have an authentic professor, it's always weird saying bye to them, but now it's especially sad. So
The work he's done and the students that he's impacted will live on.
yeah, absolutely. And I do hope that Temple and Klein College specifically do something in his memory. Maybe not now with the COVID pandemic going on, but some point in the near future, I'd like to hope that maybe some kind of a grant in his name or something like that. So I hope that he gets a lot more recognition. That he's already getting a lot of recognition, but I do hope that as time goes on, like, I think like maybe like a mini documentary, something about him. I've got so many stories that I want to share at the end of this podcast that are just like, he shared so many stories from his career, and he was always just like, yeah, whatever, just talk to this guy. This guy's in my phone, like, no biggie. He's former CNN. He's like, yeah, this is Don Lemon's phone number, whatever. So,
You know how long he worked for Temple?
sorry, what?
Do you know how long he worked for Temple?
I don't know exactly how long he was with Temple. He worked at other universities before Temple, and I don't think he had been with Temple for quite a while, but not as long as some other professors have been. So, but he's known by everybody at Temple just because of how good of a teacher he was. So we're dedicating this episode to him because he had a major impact on how I'm viewing the career that I'm finishing my degree in, and so many other students really have great stories about him. And for all of our viewers, for those watching, you can comment on our YouTube video once this is uploaded. We'd love to hear any stories that you have about Bryan Monroe, about how he's impacted you, about maybe like your personal experience with him. If you kept in contact with him after the class that you had with him, uh, we'd love to we'd love to see that, and we'll try to share as much of it as we can.
Definitely.
So this episode is dedicated to him.
Absolutely, yes. And Bryan Monroe worked a lot in the field of politics, and I'm sure he would, if he was here right now, he would be talking about the situation that our country is facing. As everybody, most of our viewers know, we just had that big thing happen at the Capitol building. That was like a week ago already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, January 6th.
Time's just flying by right now. It's just so crazy. As everybody knows, there was a mob of people, mostly conservative. I would say a lot of it was very like fringe conservative. A lot of the people associated with QAnon were there, very, very open about it. Ended up storming the Capitol building, which I don't think has happened in almost 200 years. So, something like that. It's been a very long time since we've had something like that happen. And there have been protests outside of it, but nobody's broken in for like 200 years. And unfortunately, this has resulted in, the last I checked, the deaths of 5 people. And President Trump was just, we'll get to this. He was somewhat impeached the other day because of his involvement with this, because over Twitter and over other social media platforms, he was not doing much to stop this. And in the opinion of the courts and of the public, really kind of throwing gasoline on the flames that had already happened. So he's the first president to be impeached twice. Um, the logistics of this are a lot more nuanced, where he's only been impeached by the House right now. It has to actually go through the Senate for him to be removed from office. And with 5 days left until Biden takes the presidency, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. They might wait until after to charge him with more serious things. We're all communications people, so I think that we're looking at this from a very different perspective than maybe some other people are, where I think some people are just looking at the situation as it was. And I think it's very important to look at it from the journalist's point of view. There were journalists whose lives were in danger for multiple reasons while this was going on. I mean, we can. Do either of you have any comments about this?
Yeah. So obviously what had happened at the Capitol, it was, I don't like, crazy isn't the right word, but it was just like crazy to see that happening and happening in our lifetime. I don't know about you guys, but when I was watching and like as it was happening, I was like watching on social media and I was just seeing what was going on. It was like, wow, this is actually happening modern day. Something I'd never actually see would happen in America. It was like crazy. But from the media standpoint, as someone who is like thinking about going into the news, I was like crazy because you saw like the photographers and you saw all the journalists. They had to be in the mob and in the riots and everything, but they put their life at danger to have to go in and be amongst all the rioters and take the pictures and the videos to let the public stay informed. And I think that's something that, unless you're really in the industry, you don't really I guess understand, or you don't really
Appreciate.
yeah, appreciate
Yeah.
just or realize how dangerous that actually is. And they're doing it, one, for their job, and two, because that's what they want to do to help the public stay informed. So it's kind of just, I was a little like speechless just seeing everything go down. um and even now I'm like, wow, I'm kind of lost at words that actually happened, and seeing these videos and pictures from the events, it was crazy. And thank you to
It's
all
how
those people who put their lives at danger to gather all that information and helped everyone else stay informed about what actually happened.
I'm
I think
completely agree with you, Allison. I felt so disappointed and genuinely heartbroken
Yes.
because I feel like we might have talked about this before, but growing up and reading about events that happened in history, I always would say to myself, oh, well, this wouldn't happen again, or that's not what America is today. But seeing, I mean, they literally brought a noose there.
Oh my God. And I think they were screaming like I think they were screaming to like hang Pence.
Hmm.
Like that's what the noose was and everything. And like that's heartbroken.
It's sickening, and it's genuinely, my mind just cannot wrap around how someone could, people, mass amount of people could have this much hate in their hearts for other people. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, I was reading on social media a lot of the people that were a part of that, and people of color were saying, if that was us, we wouldn't have even made it past the steps. And I think that that message just speaks volumes about white supremacy and what's really still going on in America today. And anyone who says that, oh, this storming the Capitol is no different than the Black Lives Matter protest, open your eyes. Genuinely look at the comparisons, because I saw an article where it compared pictures and videos from what happened at each event. There's no comparison. Completely different situations.
And the fact that our president didn't even help the Capitol building
He
and
encouraged
help
it.
people exactly. Like this isn't. I think people and what some people may have a hard time kind of doing is separating. This isn't a political issue.
Mm.
This is democracy. Like the end of the day, this was because Trump basically did not win the election. They were there to stop the vote and stop the count and everything. But the end of the day, Biden won fair and square, pretty much like democracy. And this isn't even a political issue, whether you're Republican, Democrat. You just have to accept like this is democracy. And our president, he backed this up and he wouldn't even go like people were telling him you need to stop them, you are the only one who can stop them, and he wouldn't even do that. Like that's honestly, that is scary. I am genuinely scared for the next few days because I don't know what's going to happen. And just seeing what has happened in the past few days and how our country has handled it, and or how our current president has handled it, it is terrifying.
This was the culmination of fringe conspiracies manifesting and resulting in what happens when people legitimately think what the QAnon people think. I think there were a lot of people there who legitimately believed in this conspiracy theory that's going on that has no there's no basis in reality for what they believe in. I'm not even going to get into what they believe in. It's too long and confounding and just like I said, not based in reality. So
Right.
these were a bunch of people who, and I should say, I think a lot of this was very fringe right people, like very like what people are now referring to as the alt right. I personally know a lot of people who lean conservative, who voted for Donald Trump, who are just like normal conservative people. Everybody I've talked to, they are all just like, this is ridiculous. This is not what we want. This is absolutely, this again goes beyond politics. And I'm sorry, just one second. Sorry. Um, uh, this is just beyond politics. I mean, this is very, I think that, Hitler comparisons are very overused these days. This was a very like fascist looking thing. This was kind of, I'm trying to think of what the best example would be, but like something like Night of Long Knives or something like that. Like these people went in there like with the intent of hurting
Yep.
politicians because they were doing something that they did not agree with. I think whether you're liberal or you're conservative, I think that if you believe in American idealism, that this is not the way to go about it at all. In any government. I mean, this is very what people refer to as like a banana republic type thing, where governments just get overthrown all the time. And it's like, well, no, America's been a country for less than 300 years. I mean, we are kind of young compared to some other countries, but I mean, our form of government is totally different where regardless of everything that's going on right now, we do live in a very free country where freedom of expression is very promoted and is extremely legal compared to other places where, I mean, you can't even say bad things about the government. But this has completely crossed the line. Once it gets to physical violence and trying to storm a building, your freedom of speech doesn't. This isn't freedom of speech anymore. You're now taking action, which is violent action, which is not protected by the First Amendment. So we've talked about this in former shows. I lean a little conservative on some issues, but this is just absolutely ridiculous. I was watching this just like and seeing what Trump was doing and just being in complete awe. I was like, this is how people are going to remember his presidency.
It is like
Of everything that's been going on the last 4 years, I mean, this is how it's ending. The last week and a half, I mean, it was like a week and a half left of his presidency, and this is how he's going out.
people are saying
No,
January.
I'm sorry.
People are saying January 6th, the day this happened, that is what Trump is going to be remembered for.
Yeah.
Whether he helped the economy, the goods and the bads he may have done.
Yep.
This is what he is going to be remembered for. And because this was such a historical day in our country's like life and our country's history that it's, and again, all I could say like is that it's just so crazy that this happened in 2021 and it's a historical day. It is something that our kids will be reading about and watching about and learning about in history. And we lived it and it happened, and I don't know. I'm still like crazy.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely terrified for inauguration because if they were, going to be doing this on a day that the House was sitting down to make, to count all of the electoral college votes, what's going to happen when Joe Biden is inaugurated? And I know I've read that police and the FBI and like all of these forms of protection are coming to make sure that that is a secure, safe environment. But we've seen how things have happened in the past with people who don't agree with politics, and I'm just genuinely concerned for Joe Biden's safety.
I have a question.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you guys know how they're planning on doing the inauguration this year? Because I know in past it was always like outside with everyone surrounding. One, because of the pandemic, and two, now because of this, it may not be physically safe for people to have this inauguration outside. Do you know?
I know
If
that
anything,
they're
I think
telling people not to come, so they're not selling any tickets or anything. So there's not going to be a huge crowd. I know that a few presidents and first ladies are coming back in support, but that's pretty much all that I've heard. And I know that they're doing some type of concert on the 14th or the 17th.
And Trump will not be there. I mean, at this point, even if he wanted to, I don't think anybody there wants him there.
Yeah, I think I saw that Joe Biden said this is the one thing that him and I finally can agree on.
Yeah, even if people don't like Joe Biden for whatever reason, he's been extremely calm and patient throughout all of this. I mean, he's been very vocal about like how wrong this is, but he's not having meltdowns about it. He's been just very, even if you think his speaking isn't as good as it used to be, I mean, he's been very soft spoken about it in a good way. He's been very just like, democracy is going to prevail here. I'm just waiting for this to blow over. I want to do good for America. And again, like politics are just so skewed now that it's just that there's people who legitimately think that Joe Biden is like an evil person. It's like, he is not. He's not. I mean, he's a local kind of. He was in Delaware for the longest time. He's not. I mean, where he did politics for most of his career is not that far from where we are. And if you look at his policies on things, there's nothing extreme about him. I mean, it's going to be very, I mean, I think he'll be very similar politically to Obama. I think that they definitely share. So it's going to be similar. It'll be similar to having Obama back in the White House, which, people might be happy about, people might be sad about, but we're not going to get 4 years of just crazy texts every day. Like, as somebody who's trying to be a journalist, I have to watch the news every day, all the time. And it's just been, I honestly like didn't know, like I'm finishing my journalism degree, but I was like honestly considering going into another field that journalism majors go into, because I was just like, I don't know if I can handle this. But I was like, you know what, this is like a one time thing. I don't think we're going to get another Donald Trump in office after everything that's happened. I think people are going to be very, very careful about not having another individual like him in office. And his reputation is completely tarnished after this. I mean, nobody agreed with this. The way I'm looking at it is, I'm just going to show this example real quick. This is just a Patagonia hat. Everybody who had, like, even in their hearts, like they really believed in everything that Trump was saying, they like kind of had the MAGA hat on, and while they were watching everything happen at the Capitol building, they were going like,
Yep.
okay, no, not good.
Yeah, it's like
Because I think after this, I think he lost a large portion of his supporters, like where people are just like, oh, the people who believed in what he was saying the last 4 years, even when he was running for president, they're now like not even able to look at that, because they're just like, this guy like kind of asked for people to storm the building,
exactly.
which is not, I mean, for people who do lean conservative, I think that if they saw that, it's again so two-sided. If they saw like Black Lives Matter people doing that, they'd be denouncing them all day long. But then they did it, and it's like, oh well, we're doing it to overthrow the government. It's like
But you
most
don't
of the
need to
people.
overturn the government. Like
Yeah,
nothing that
exactly.
happened. Like I understand, I guess, their mindset that it was like they're trying to stop the vote. It was a
Yeah,
fraud election and things like that. But
yeah.
the end,
No proof of
What
that.
proof?
Also,
Exactly. On what proof?
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
this wasn't a political thing. Like you were saying, most conservatives, even if they agreed with what Trump was, or most Republicans, even if they agreed with what Trump was saying the past
yeah,
4 years, they looked at this event and they said, what is this? This isn't what we believe in. We know that this is wrong, because is just this isn't a political issue. This was
yeah,
an extremist group
yeah,
going and causing, I mean, they were calling these people terrorists,
yeah,
that they destroyed and they caused a serious threat on people's lives.
yeah,
They were there to hurt. Like those politicians were feared for their lives as they were in a full lockdown with
yeah,
chaos among them.
yeah. I'm wondering if after this, people are going to be more patriotic or less patriotic. Maybe they'll be more patriotic because they're like, we don't agree with what happened. We believe in democracy. We don't want anything like this to ever happen again. We believe in American ideals, and this is not American. This is not an American ideal to storm the Capitol building, and which resulted in 5 people dying. I'm going to keep saying that because that's what happens. 5 people died. One was it, 1 or 2 police officers were killed.
I only heard that.
I think it was 1 and 4 protesters, 2 or 3 of whom just happened to have had heart attacks or something like that because of everything happening. One woman was shot,
Mhm.
which is unfortunate. But I mean, that's what happens in a major riot when there's police and people storming a building. This is America. We're known for going to war with lots of countries. This is something that a country we would go to war with usually does, where people are just not necessarily people, but just chaos like this.
To
I
be
like
completely honest, sorry, Allison, but to be completely honest, I'm embarrassed to be an American right now. And I've felt that way for the past, at least this past year, if not longer. And you're completely right. This is an attack on the American people from the
Yeah,
American people. And they're saying, oh, this is our house. This is our house.
yeah,
Well, why wouldn't you want to underarm it and protect your house?
yeah,
I just don't,
exactly.
it it just blows my mind, and I really can't even understand
It made no
how they thought
sense.
that this was
Yeah,
right,
they
how
were
they thought
doing
that
what they
this was
think
accepted.
like Black Lives Matter, or like a liberal mob would be doing, and they did exactly that. And they're just like, well, we're patriotic. It's like, not in my
No, that's
eyes.
not in my mind.
Not in my eyes. This is not what patriots do.
No, because if you were patriotic, you would have accepted what the American people said, and they
Yeah,
voted for Joe Biden.
yeah,
They wanted Joe Biden in office, they do not want Donald Trump. So the fact that I mean, they recounted the votes and they looked for, there were all these
yeah,
investigations that went into it. So I just
yeah,
don't understand. And Donald Trump just, of course, he supports it because he wants to selfishly be in office again. So for him, he's thinking, oh, my people are fighting for me.
yeah.
That's why, because we'll talk about this in a little bit, but there's a documentary on Hulu about the attack on the Capitol, and it interviews people of the Senate and members of the press and people that were involved in the situation and their opinions and what they were saying was actually going on at the time, how they were feeling, and it's just genuinely heartbreaking to see. 110% recommend watching it because it was so eye-opening in the most disturbing way.
Yes, that's literally the best description of it, because I know, Jordan, I know we talked about it after. We felt the same way during it. I was sitting there with tears in my eyes because it was such a disbelief. And you saw such a firsthand experiences. There is now images in my mind that I cannot get out of just people with pure hatred right now in modern, like I keep saying modern day, because this isn't like history. Well, this isn't history that happened like hundreds, like 100 years ago, hundreds of years ago. This happened a week ago. And this documentary was so eye-opening, like you said, in the most disturbing way possible. Like you will sit there with tears, like I got chills all over.
I'm not a very political person. I think
Mhm.
I've mentioned that in the past before, but from watching the events and seeing it hands on, and I mean, I really salute the media and the Congress and people that were there in that situation, really genuinely terrified for their lives,
Mhm.
being able to provide us with someone who wasn't there to be able to see it firsthand what really went down.
Yeah.
I applaud them for one, turning it around and spinning it in a week to be able to get that out to everyone to show, this is what people need to see.
Yeah.
I'd also like to mention the security of the Capitol building. I know in this documentary there was one security guard or Capitol police officer that they talked about, and it was this one guy who was trying to back away the rioters, and he led them away from where all the congressmen and women were. So he led them away and was like, go over here and destroy over here, stay away from the people. But he was calling for backup, no one was there, and it was just him. And you can genuinely see the fear in this guy's eyes. And as he was saying, like, get away, stay back, as he realized, like, it's me against like hundreds of them. So I applaud them, and like, thank you for those officers that tried to defend the Capitol, that sadly backup was just not called. And like the National Guard should have been there. There's an image of what happened in the summer with the Black Lives Matter protests and then what just happened, and you see all the National Guard in front of the Capitol building, and then you
Where were they
see
then?
where were they. And it's extremely frustrating seeing that was not called for hours after. Like, where were they to defend our capital and to restore order over there? Where
And
where
what blows my mind is we saw, we all live in Philly, so we know exactly. I drove past members of the National Guard who were here when all of the riots and the Black Lives Matter protest were going on. And it was mentioned in the documentary, this is not something that just happened overnight. This white supremacist notion in these people's heads and these Trump supporters, this has been going on and slowly developing and being encouraged by the president for years now. So the fact that they knew that something like this could have happened and didn't fully protect the Capitol the way that they have when it wasn't needed. We didn't need the National Guard here with on peaceful protest for the Black Lives Matter movement. They
Yeah.
should have been more prepared, and the fact that, the members of Congress had to beg the governor of Maryland to help bring in support when the support should have already been there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You see in this documentary, by the way, it's called it was 24 hours attack on the Capitol.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it for anyone everyone. Like, it's on Hulu. Everyone needs to watch this, because just seeing what is going on, it was such an eye-opening experience to be able to see firsthandly, like a firsthand experience of what happened. But in the documentary, you see all these different Congress people and people of office, they were calling Maryland, like you said, begging them to, you need to send the National Guard, you need to send the National Guard from Maryland because we need help in DC right now. And the president was just nowhere to be seen.
Didn't answer his phone calls.
There was people begging, like calling him, I forgot who it might have been Chris Christie. I think he said he was calling President Trump for like a good half an hour and he just refused to pick up the phone. And because he was like, you need to help, you need to stop these people.
You started it, you need to end it.
And I know they called Ivanka Trump. They're like, do something, like get him to say something. And then when he finally did, and it was, I mean, what was that tweet? He said he was like, I understand, we love you, go home.
Yeah. Yeah. You're very special. Go home. We love you.
No, they just destroyed American soil and American government building. You can't treat them like that when they destroyed things and they caused lives to be lost.
They're saying that those actions are acceptable.
Those
And
actions are not acceptable.
that, they're saying that Black lives don't matter. Because if you're treating the way that getting into the Capitol like this, and you're not taking action, those people just walked out of the Capitol. No percussions, nothing. I know that some of them have been found and have been arrested. I know the guy that was holding the Confederate flag, he was arrested. The guy who stole
Nancy
was arrested.
Right.
But but if there's no action taken by Trump, this is just sending a message that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That we can do whatever the hell we want, and it's all right to storm the Capitol building, and it's all right to put a noose up, and it's all right to trash our government, and that just the whole entire thing sickens me to the core.
There are still people who are being partisan about this, where they're like, Nancy Pelosi is using this to her advantage. Her office got destroyed. I'd be mad too. I'd be mad too. They went into her office and destroyed everything. They were going through her desk. They took, there's that image of people, they took her her name tag off the door. Like, yeah, I'd want that guy gone too. It's not self-interest. Like, she was directly, had she been in her office, I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
Something that could have really happened to her, most likely. Like, this isn't partisan anymore. Like, this is completely beyond politics. I said it before, I'll say it again. This was very fascist looking.
Yeah.
And people were carrying weapons when the mob, it was never peaceful from the start. Black Lives Matter protests, not a single one of them had a weapon.
Yeah.
So I cannot unwrap my head.
People are not just hospitalized, people are dead because of this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
People are dead. Like, there are people who died there. Like, this is ridiculous.
And bringing it back to the journalists and the media who were there, who were again scared, but they had a job to do. In this documentary, it did show that these media, people of the media, they were begging to come into an office to be protected because they were genuinely scared, and they were there to cover, that is their physical job. And I forgot who it was, but one congressman, he took a bunch of the media and journalists
and brought them into their
locked
office.
them in his own office because they were genuinely terrified for their lives.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of people in America and around the world, they have this idea of what a journalist is, which is like this smarmy guy in a suit who's making very pardon my language, but very smart ass remarks to somebody that they disagree with on TV. And they do exist. And me personally, I don't like those people on either side. But people forget about these journalists who are going there in sometimes they have to go in body armor or something like that. They have to wear helmets that say, media or journalist or something like that. And, they're there with cameras. They're in the midst of this. It's very guerrilla journalist is the wrong way to think, but they're walking right into the fray of it.
Mm-hmm.
And those journalists don't get enough respect, and they're very
underappreciated.
I'm talking too much. Yeah, they're very underappreciated, and I think that I would like to hope after this they're more recognized for the work that they do in situations not just like this, but the ones who go overseas and they're documenting what's happening over in the wars that we're involved with, or even other,
I mean, there's
things
been
that are going
reports
on.
of journalists who have been killed and kidnapped, who have been going overseas to document these things, and they lost their lives because of it. There was that um correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there that journalist a few years ago who got beheaded, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, he was one of the first people that was like publicly beheaded.
Mhm.
His I'm Unfortunately I'm forgetting his name right now, but yeah, he was one of the first people that was publicly executed on film by ISIS. Was an American journalist.
Yes.
Like
And
we put
journalists
our
have
li-
such a
the,
bad they
hmm?
tend to have such a bad rep in our country and just in society. They have maybe not a bad rep, but they're seen as someone who a lot of times will skew the truth or something to get like a point across or something like that. And like obviously there definitely are people like that, but that's not most journalists, especially nowadays. As like we know, we're studying this, they teach us in school how to completely like John, I mean, you study journalism. They teach you how to be, you have to be non-biased most of the
Yeah,
time.
exactly. I always try to be non-biased in
Mhm.
this. Like whenever I'm watching the news, I watch the news that might lean a little liberal, the one that might lean a little conservative. I'm literally like going back and forth between the two, and I'm just like I'm getting like two different stories here. Like I just want. Unfortunately, I think unbiased media does exist, but it's being right now. It's being phased out by the very biased media, which either side is not good. You shouldn't be interjecting your own opinion in things. I always try to look at things from like I just want to see what is going on, and I don't want anybody's opinion.
Mhm.
That's what opinion writers are for. Like you can write your opinion, and that's great. But I want like journalists are supposed to be people who we see something and then we report on it so you can see what you're not able to physically be there for.
Right.
And
I
I
feel like
think
there's
this was a great
and
situation where people were sorry, what, Jordan?
I was just saying, like, I feel like there's just so much, especially nowadays, nothing,
Yeah,
there's so much fake news out there that
yeah,
people will just believe without fact checking.
yeah,
If anyone just posted an article on Facebook and it just said, oh, blah, blah, blah happened, people will just repost it without, you're spreading
yeah,
the wrong information out there. And it's so hard nowadays to put, okay, what is fact and what is opinion? What
exactly. Yes.
genuinely happened
Yeah,
and what are people saying happened in their eyes
yeah.
or just making something up to start stuff.
Or whataboutism, which is very annoying, where take this situation. There were political commentators who leaned right who were being still partisan about this, where they were saying like, "Yeah, this is awful, but what about Black Lives Matter?" And it's like, well, we're not talking about Black Lives Matter. We're talking about these people that just stormed the Capitol building and now 5 people are dead. This is a very different situation.
Mhm.
I think
This came from a fringe conspiracy, whereas with the Black Lives Matter situation, that's actually something that is happening in America, still happening in 2021. I mean, it was
Yeah,
very rampant last year with everything that happened with Floyd,
George Floyd. Yeah,
George Floyd. Yeah, George Floyd.
there's
And
fact, there's genuine evidence to back up the fact that America still has white supremacy.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
yeah, people that say that the both things happened that are the same, no way.
yeah,
I think something that's to kind of also maybe see the other side as well. I think
yeah,
people are kind of putting the Black Lives Matter protests, they're kind of thinking it as obviously most of it was like when it was the genuine protest, they were all peaceful.
Right.
It was after like when it got dark, maybe when it was the like all the looting and the destruction. I think well, that wasn't, and it's been known that that was not, those were people taking advantage of
yeah,
the protest, but the genuine protests and the Black Lives Matter movement wasn't the looting and wasn't the violent part. So
no,
I think people who are saying, well, this happened earlier, so it's the same thing. I think they're comparing the two when the actual protest and the movement was peaceful, not
yeah,
wasn't the looting and wasn't the destruction. So I think that could be where these people are thinking. But again,
yeah,
that's where fact checking
yeah,
and seeing what actually happened, because then you can see that it wasn't the same. And obviously it wasn't the same. No,
And
yeah,
those protests only turned violent when the police turned violent.
That
Yeah.
is
It
true.
was never one of the protesters who started that. It was the police.
Mhm.
So I just there's no way that you could if anyone tried to sit here and tell me that they were the same
They're not.
open.
Hey, I'm not being preachy here. I'm going to turn off my journalism unbiased thing for just a moment. If you're a race supremacist of any kind, you're a stupid person, and I don't want to talk to you. It's a silly thing. It's a very old thing that comes from when humanity was still very tribal, and we would see people that didn't look like us, and it was just like, oh, their culture's different from us. I don't want to get near that. And now, especially in America, we are such a melting pot that to be like that in America, you're just an extremely closed-minded person. So
Mhm.
uh, it's very ridiculous that, I mean, I do want to say, like, if you're of any kind, I think it's a silly thing. I think that it just causes division no matter what. So I think that it's just an extremely silly thing that, like, in 2021, that's still an issue going on in America.
And it's an
It's
issue
silly.
that doesn't seem like it's going to be resolved unless those type of people who think that way
Yeah.
change their minds.
Yeah.
Because they're just spreading it. They're
Yeah.
they're spreading their thoughts, and
Yeah.
it's taking over more and more people. And I'm proud that we've come so far to we're being more vocal, and we are fighting back, and we are making strides in that sense. But
Yeah.
it is genuinely terrifying that looking at what happened at the Capitol, that mass amount of people, and that's not even as many people as probably would have been there if they wanted to be.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to me. It really
Yeah.
is.
It is.
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of Americans that saw that and they're like, yeah, it makes sense. We're trying to overthrow a corrupt government. And it's like, again, this is fringe conspiracy stuff that is not based in reality at all. So why just I can't wrap my head around it. I don't go down fringe conspiracy rabbit holes, so I don't get it. It's hard for me to understand where these people were coming from
I,
and the double standard that they had, that, like, oh, the same thing would have happened with Black Lives. No, it wouldn't.
I do gotta
No.
admit, I think it was really awesome to see how social media handled this, and by
Yep.
banning Trump on a lot of platforms. We
Yep,
have
that's our next
Twitter,
subject. Yep.
obviously, that was first, and
Yep.
Twitter, thank God. Like I mean, they've been trying to censor and cut his
immediately for a
voice.
while.
Mhm.
I think a very important factor in here is that Trump was, like, very active and very known on Twitter, like, long before he ran for president. Like, I
Mhm.
think, like, the early 2010s, he started, like, really, like, seriously tweeting, and he was always saying, I mean, he was one of the first people of, like, the birther movement, where he was like, Obama was born in Africa. Again, no proof of that ever happening. And even if so, who cares? Who cares? The
That's
guy
what
the guy was the guy was voted in twice. Yeah. And it's one of those things, just no proof. Just,
oh, wait,
I don't like him, so why, I'm just going to say what I feel.
can I
Right.
also just bring something up? And I understand this is just how our country runs when electing a president, but isn't our country founded on immigrants and like literally immigrants, and we are founded on immigrants? So
Yeah.
what if he was born in a different country? If
Yeah.
he's an American citizen,
Yeah.
Mhm.
then why we are founded on immigrants?
Yeah.
So I know that's the country's like laws and that is how it's always been.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense if we are a country founded on immigrants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless
It's
you
yeah.
are a Native American who your tribe was here before America was born, everyone is an immigrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
My
our
my grandparents my grandparents on both sides immigrated here in the 40s and 50s. So I'm, like, from Germany and from Ireland, and they came here, and you know what? They weren't these, like, living off of welfare immigrants that we hear so much about from certain people in the political realm. It's like, no, my grandparents, like actually worked jobs. They owned businesses. My grandfather was a welder in New York City. Like, they did things to benefit the country they lived in. They came here. They liked the ideals because they came from countries. I mean, one was obviously completely war torn at that point, Germany. So they came here for better opportunity, and you know what? They contributed a lot to the societies that they lived in, mostly in New York. So it's a silly thing to just instantly just be like, I don't want immigrants in my country. It's like, everyone here immigrated here.
yeah,
The only people who didn't are the Native Americans. and we all know what happened with them, which is very sad.
Mhm.
And it's everything going on right now. It's just like I feel like I just have to be like this half the time, where I'm just like rubbing my head, just like this is just too much going on. This country's so weird.
It's a completely double standard. You know, Americans, we boast about the fact that we're so
Yeah,
cultured because we have all these people coming from different
yeah,
countries to live in America, but yet, you know, Trump supporting, oh, build the wall, and
yeah,
oh, if you know, Barack Obama was born in African America, like in Africa, he
yeah,
can't be a president. So what is the message here?
yeah.
You are just fighting against what we've worked so hard to build it.
Trump's mother was a Scottish immigrant.
You don't hear him
His
talking about
first
that.
wife was from like Czechoslovakia or one of those countries. The one who he had Donald, Eric, and I'm forgetting his first daughter's name.
Right. And he acts like they're
Their mother was from another country.
yeah. It's just ridiculous and it's
Yeah,
disgusting. And I can completely understand how every other country is looking at us and pointing their fingers and laughing.
It's
yeah,
it's very embarrassing,
yeah,
and I was already embarrassed because of how we are handling COVID-19, but now seeing this, like this is completely embarrassing. And if people can't realize that we are right now the laughing stock of the world
yeah,
because of everything going on, that's just like
yeah,
If this happened in another country, we would all be, oh, ha ha ha, you know, we're so much better than that country because
yeah,
we're this and that. No, we're doing worse stuff
and we
than
act
other.
yeah,
like our country, America, we act like the big brother. We act like we have to help all these other countries and save them.
We
We
need help.
we need help
yeah,
ourselves, and we can't be telling other countries what to do when we have things like this going on. And it was completely a step back in our country's growth and our history, complete step back.
yeah. No, I absolutely.
I'm excited for the future. I think that
Yeah,
things, you know, we've learned a lot in these past 2 years, and I just genuinely hope the people that are running our country
Mhm.
take
yeah,
that and grow from it.
yeah,
So I guess we'll see what happens.
yeah. Exactly.
I hope that we can fix I mean, I know we're so badly politically divided right now as a country, but I
Yeah,
hope that in some way we can fix it and we can help COVID-19, the pandemic.
Hmm?
yep,
I
Mhm.
said I just don't want any more of this us against them
Like
mentality.
in the end of the day, guys, we're all Americans. Can we
yep,
just get along? Like we don't have to, and I understand it's easier said than done, but just we're all Americans, and the huge like divide in this country, it's I mean, you guys saw it in the last election. It was so close, the election, that it
yeah.
just showed how divided our country actually is.
I was convinced Hillary was winning the last election, and she didn't. And I watched the results live, and I was like, actually, like, oh wow. Like in my head, I was like, oh, he has no chance. But it's like, no, enough people believed what he was saying that they voted for him.
Yep, we all joked about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, but
was ridiculous. Getting back to to Twitter.
mhm.
I mean, insurrection via Twitter. I mean, I think that's grounds to get banned for life. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well he wasn't abiding to their rules and policies.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? In the eyes of Twitter, whoever it is, you know, it's Jack Dorsey, whoever it is, I'm sure it's just some higher up people that are having to, monitor his Twitter every waking moment of the day. I'm sure they're happy to be
Oh
done
yeah.
with him.
Probably a big
Where
relief at this
they were
point.
like, you know what, he's like a week from not being the president anymore. Like at this rate, like no, we're done. Can't do it anymore. And multiple other social media companies have
Yeah, I
gotten rid of
wrote
him
them down.
completely. Yeah,
So we got Facebook,
yep,
Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Amazon Web,
yep,
Shopify, Spotify, Reddit, Twitch, Liquid Web, which I actually haven't heard of,
yeah,
TikTok, like a lot of. I mean, he can't be on any
yeah,
social media right now, which I'm all in support of.
yeah,
I don't need to hear him running his mouth.
No.
yep, yeah. Um, and I mean, there's some people that are still saying like, "Oh, this is a freedom of speech issue," and it's like,
Nope.
well, not and this he's not just a citizen that's saying some crazy stuff. He's the leader. He's still, as of right now, the leader of the free
So
world, who's using his media platforms for, in the opinion of most people, not good things. So
And he's going
let's just,
against what
yeah,
he's I mean, we never read the terms and agreements, but it's in there and he's going against what all of these social media platforms
yeah,
have put in there. So it is
yeah,
their right to kick him off.
yeah,
It's no freedom of speech issue.
I'm
yeah,
gonna pose a question to you guys. So a lot of
yeah.
people are saying like that he should have been banned earlier, and all these social media platforms should have gotten rid of him earlier. What do you guys think to that?
I think that this is an unprecedented situation where like Obama was never posting crazy stuff on his Twitter
Mhm.
Right.
every day. I mean, I like I had days where I was like, can I just not hear about Trump's Twitter just once today? Can I have like a Twitterless day from him? Like I followed him on Twitter just because I wanted to like see what he was saying every day, and every time I went on, I was just like, oh my god, like come on, man, like
I think
yeah, we never had this before, so like I think a lot of these media companies were like, we don't really
Like,
know
what
what
are
to
you
do with
doing?
this because he used to just be the rich guy who said crazy stuff, and now he's
Now he's the
the
president.
president who's saying crazy stuff, and the world leaders are watching. Like he called Kim Jong Un fat on there. Like, do you remember that? I was just like,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
god.
I completely agree with John. I think like this definitely needed to be done. And in your question of should this have been done sooner, I agree. It's like uncharted territory, but they did
Yeah,
try. They tried to stop it. You know, they were
yeah,
flagging his tweets and saying this is not
yeah,
accurate information. And I
yeah.
think that was a good way for them to start. But after this happened, there's no you have to pull the plug on him.
If he was a sensible person and he got his rights back to be on Twitter, which I mean, it's basically what happened. Like they went to court with Twitter so he would get back on. You would think if he was a sensible person, being like, all right, maybe I should like
Maybe I
pull
should
it
chill.
back a
Maybe
little
I
bit.
should not. Yeah,
Maybe I could pull it back a little bit and just write actual presidential stuff. No, I went right back to what he was doing. Like that's the kind of person we were dealing with. This is kind of like a little side note, but this is something that I recently saw that really made sense to me. I just today finished up a journalism class called Journalism and the Movies with Irv Slifkin. Great class if you're able to take it. One of the We had to watch films about journalism, and one of them was did either of you ever watch Citizen Kane, the Orson Welles film?
I haven't, no.
So in it, Orson Welles plays Charles Kane, who's like a media mogul who completely inherits it from his rich sort of father figure. Yeah, I don't want to give a lot of stuff away from the film, but he basically like inherits all this money and kind of does whatever he wants. He owns a bunch of media. He uses it to his advantage. The guy's a complete narcissist where like he will do anything for his pride, even if it's at his complete detriment. And I was watching this and I was like, this is what we just had 4 years of.
right.
Like he was a lesser scale of that, but still it was like this is exactly what he did. Like he would like dig his heels in the sand and be like, no, I'm going to say what I feel like, even if millions of people disagree with it and it doesn't make any sense and it's going to be very confusing. And I mean, at certain points, potentially get us into war.
Which we
Like
were close
almost
to.
get us into war.
Mhm.
Like
Would you say, Allison? You kind of
Oh, I just said we were close a few times to even that.
we were close over tweets. Over tweets. Like I think that breaks contract. I think that that goes against the rules of Twitter.
Think so.
I
Just a little
think if I'm I think if I'm using Twitter to ins, you know, incite bad relations with other world leaders that could potentially lead to nuclear
yeah.
holocaust, I think that
That's how
kind of
not
goes
to
against the
avoid
rules.
the
So
debate on Twitter.
I really would
yeah,
agree with you here, John.
and I think that this goes back to like what happened with the Capitol building. I think there were a lot of people who leaned conservative who they didn't like the tweets, but there were also these people who dug their heels in the sand, and be like, no, he should be able to say whatever he wants. It's like no, like this has repercussions. This has repercussions. What he's doing, he's not just a citizen writing crazy stuff all the time. He's now somebody with the nuclear codes, writing, calling the leader of North Korea a fat guy. Like, oh my god, just I'm to be honest, I'm like looking forward to just like a bit of normalcy with
Yeah.
Biden. I hope he gets things back to normal with COVID. I hope that he can heal the division that this country is going through. Um, I get why people liked Trump, but I think that this really just like put the nail in his coffin with his reputation. And I think after this, I mean, he still has a few $billion, so I'm sure he's going to do something else after he's done. He's not going to just vanish, but unless he goes to jail, which might happen.
Yeah.
Yes,
Aren't they saying
Trump for prison 2021.
that? Aren't they saying that he could possibly go to prison for all this?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially don't quote me on this, but I mean, in 5 days he's not going to be president anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that they might be able to try him just as Citizen Trump, and it's going to be very different. Like I said, if they totally got rid of him now, and they made Pence president, Pence could. I'm not saying he would, but he could do what Gerald Ford did with Richard Nixon, which is, um, let him go on everything that he's been charged of. I'm forgetting the word.
Pardon?
Pardon him of everything that he's been doing, which would be insane. And I'm not saying he would do that. I think Pence is actually kind of backing away from Trump right now, from what I've been reading.
Yeah, it seems like.
I read that he unfollowed him on Twitter right before he got permanently banned. So I think that that's a telltale sign of he's just like, ooh, I don't like where this is going.
Gotta get myself out of here.
Yeah. Slowly walks out of the room. I feel like Trump at one point was just like, oh my goodness, guys, I need you to back me up. And he turned around, there was nobody there. Like,
Did you guys actually so as we know, Pence was in the Capitol building when everything happened, and he
Yep.
was in lockdown with the Secret Service.
Yeah.
Apparently, Trump didn't even reach out to Pence as his vice president, didn't even make sure he was okay, he was safe. Like, apparently there was no contact there. And I don't know, it's like whether you like the guy or not, he's your coworker. It's one of those situations.
Yeah.
If your coworker or someone you work directly with is in possible danger, wouldn't you like reach out and be like, "Hey, are you okay?" And like
Yeah.
just that's not even a president versus vice president thing. That's just also a human thing, humanity thing. Just
Yeah.
if someone you know is in danger, you would want to reach out. And that also then speaks a lot to his character. I
But at
would
the same time, the danger
Yeah.
was caused by him.
That is
Yeah.
true. That is also very
Yeah.
true.
So I don't know. He's a terrible person. I said it.
Yep. I mean, I think anybody who thought that he was a good person before this, it's like he was like a crooked business guy his whole life. Like that's, and I think a lot of people were even like, yeah, we know, we're going to vote for him anyway. And it's like I can sympathize with some aspects of that, but I mean, at the same point, it's like to be surprised that he did stuff like this. It's like the audacity.
Right.
Like I see stuff like this, and I'm like, I'm not surprised at all. But I'm just like, well, this is what people voted for.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and again, people didn't vote for him supporting people running up to the Capitol building. I think that like a small few people were okay with that, which is completely un-American and goes against what he had been promoting for the last 4 or 5 years. So I think again, the whole situation is just so weird and makes no sense. But this is something where you know to act surprised that the corrupt businessman is acting like a corrupt businessman, you're
You
that bird that like digs his head in the sand.
Glad it's over.
yeah, and
Yeah, I want I want some normalcy. I don't want to hear about his tweets every single day.
Agreed.
I want
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I am looking forward to actually having a politician as president. Because
Yep.
whether you like Biden or not, he
Yeah.
knows how to run a country because he was a politician. He's not a businessman, and I
Yeah.
think that is kind of a blessing for my ears that someone actually like someone will know how to run a country and not a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think a lot of people voted for him purely from an economic standpoint, where they're like, "It's good we have a businessman." It's like, okay, I I do agree with that. I think that somebody who is economic savvy is good, and he was for the most part like a little more economic savvy than some other people. from his business dealings, which were questionable. I mean, that's a whole other, we could do a whole other show on that, which we're not going to do. But that alone does not make a president.
Yeah.
Like, okay, he might be smart economically, but if everything else, if it's like 10 things that make you president and you're only filling in one of them, like that to me does not make a president. And I think that this was, I always feel like America is kind of an experiment. Again, we are like still kind of a young country compared to other countries. We're not even 300 years old. And this was definitely part of the experiment where we took a chance with somebody, and this ended up just for various reasons didn't work out. And I think that you people on both sides of the aisle can agree with that. That's not a liberal statement, that's not a conservative statement, that's just a American statement that just didn't work out. So I think that, you know, everybody hopes that their president does well. I think everybody in America hoped that Donald Trump, a lot of people were very skeptical of him at first, but I think at the end of the day, everyone was like, I just hope he does what's good for America, and that he doesn't make tweets that put us into the area of a nuclear holocaust. But that's a different story as well. So
Like you said, it was a very big chance, and I know a lot of people, whether you supported him or not, they went in with an open mind, like, okay, he's going to
yep,
be the president. Let's see what happens. And
yep,
I think I would say he failed at that.
yeah,
People went in and said, okay, this is what's happening. Let's take a chance and see. Maybe it won't be too bad. I don't think whether he did good economic things for our country and or not,
yeah,
he failed at the other things that are also important within our country.
yeah, exactly. And again, we're all communications people here, so I think that it is important to observe what happened with the media with this, where people put their lives at risk to get this story to us. Where, you know, in America we have the First Amendment, and we have other laws that protect the media. And unfortunately, he was very hostile towards the media because of a bias that he had, which I do. I will say that I do believe that there is bias in the media on both sides, but that doesn't encompass all of the media. There are actual journalists who were at the Capitol building who they weren't there being like taking pictures, writing notes, being like, I hope this doesn't look bad for the Democrat Party or the Republican Party. Like, no, they're just there observing what is going on, this crazy event. There's no politics to this.
Right.
This is I think that the media needs more recognition for the hard work that they're doing, and I really hope that, sad as the situation is, that there's a silver lining, that we can look at the media in all aspects of it and see, like you guys said, they made that great documentary about everything that was happening. It's very eye-opening. So I'd like to hope that they'll just get more respect as time goes on.
Again, we think everyone should watch this documentary. It's called The 24-Hour Assault on the Capitol. It is on Hulu. It is an ABC special. ABC?
Yeah, it's about an hour and 10 minutes, but so good, so worth it. Definitely kind of rocked my world, and I felt very stunned even now, even after I've watched it. It's been a little bit since I've watched it, but definitely we suggest that. And we do want to let our listeners know. So since we are students, we're getting back into the semester. We've all got some things kind of going on. So we're going to start making our show bi-weekly
Mm-hmm.
instead of every week. So we're still gonna have the same great content, just as not as much. So we're gonna rein it in just a little bit. We're so
We're all
excited.
busy.
Right.
Yep.
We're getting definitely
Yep.
this semester. I feel like we're all gonna be very immersed.
Yes.
Yep.
We will
This
have
is my last semester.
Woo!
um yeah, so again though this show is dedicated to Bryan Monroe, who just passed away, the journalist and Temple professor. Um John, did you want to say anything else about Bryan?
I have some cool anecdotes about him that I want to share with some people, and I know if we have other client students who had him, they all have great anecdotes. So again, in the YouTube video where you can comment, or even on what we're going to post on Instagram about this, share your stories about Bryan Monroe. We really want to hear them. We'll share as much of them as we can. Um, the two anecdotes I have about him, so much great stuff. He was just a great professor. He was a really open guy. I was saying at the beginning of the show, I think some people have that like us versus them way of looking at the media where like they're like above us and they're just talking heads on the TV. I never got that from him. He was a guy who was very immersed in the news world, but he was a very down to earth guy. He would talk to you about all of his stories, about his little tips and tricks. I took journalism, law, and ethics with him, so he would clarify things if something didn't make sense. Just a really good guy and a very great professor. And the two cool stories I have about him were actually from my first class I took with him um, last spring. I was the first day of class, and he was telling us about his career. And he actually asked, like, "Does anybody know anything about me?" And a couple people shared. He had his own Wikipedia page and everything. I mean, he was very known in the journalism world. And I'd mentioned at the beginning of the show, he had worked with the Obama campaign when he was first running, and knew the Obamas personally. Um, and he had shared some images of him with them, like at like social gatherings, campaign stuff after he had become president. And he actually did the first interview with Obama after he had taken the presidency. So that's pretty important, I think. Um, After everything happened with COVID, um, in the middle of that semester, we were doing our Zoom class, and where you can like turn off the camera, like I'm doing now, and I've got that headshot of me that you guys can see. Well, his and Allison, I think you're going to put this at the end of the video. I sent a picture of it because I took a picture of it because I was just like, this guy is so cool. It was him like bro hugging Obama like it was nothing. That was his screensaver, and everybody like when he came back, he was like, "Yeah, it's me and Obama, whatever." It's just like I was the president. He's like, "Yeah, he's my buddy." So that was the cool anecdote. And also on the first day of class, he mentioned, and I had read about this before his class, and I wasn't expecting him to bring it up, but he mentioned he did the last interview with Michael Jackson ever before it was like a year before he died, and it was the last public interview that he gave. He played us the raw audio from his computer of that interview, and it was like a ghost was in the room. It was the weirdest thing. I was just like, that's Michael Jackson talking. And it was the actual like MP3 audio that he just had on his computer that he was teaching in class on. Like he would do slideshows and everything that we would take notes of. And on that same computer, he just happened to have raw audio from his interview with Michael Jackson, like uncut raw audio. So those are like two cool things that I will always stick in my head about Bryan Monroe. He also followed me on Instagram and he would like my posts, so that was really cool. Again, I didn't have as much of a relationship with him as some other students do. I know students who like talk to him on a weekly basis. I definitely didn't talk to him on a weekly basis, but we kind of we were like things on Instagram back and forth, and that was kind of the extent of our relationship after the class. But yeah, I was genuinely sad when I got the news the other day. I cried a little bit, which doesn't happen a lot. He was fairly young. He was only 55. He's got two young children, so it was very sad to hear that. And again, I just I'm just a student. I'm not anybody in power, but I do hope that the Klein College will maybe make like a fund in his name or something like that. I think he more than deserves it for all the work he's done in the journalistic field. Again, used to be the head of CNN Politics. He ran Ebony and Jet magazines. There's a couple other newspapers that I'm not remembering the names of, but please look up Bryan Monroe. Look up the work that he's done. You can find videos of him on YouTube. Just a great journalist that we've lost very suddenly and very sadly. So again, this show is dedicated to him. Um, Hopefully he's watching somewhere. I'd like to hope he is. Um, and yeah, anybody who has stories about Bryan Monroe, please share them with us. We want to hear them. We'll share as much as we can on our social media. Yeah, just we lost another good one, and it's sad, but as journalists, you have to keep the news. Sorry, what?
His legacy will live on.
Yeah, and he would say this. You know what? Tragedy happens, and the news is 24/7. So we just got to keep moving forward.
Mhm.
We got to keep moving forward, but we'll always keep him in our memory. So God bless you, Bryan Monroe. Thank you for a great class. My best semester of school in general. I've shared this on the show before. I went back to school a few years ago and kind of had to start from scratch because I just didn't do that good when I started. I changed my major and everything. So um, it was my second semester at Temple, and it really just all the classes I took, especially his, like really molded the way I look at the field that I'm going into for the rest of my life. So thank you, and please share stories about him.
So this has been the Hot Mess Podcast. Thank you everyone for watching, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at _Hot Mess Podcast. Be sure to watch our videos. You can go on Spotify, on YouTube, watch our later shows, and stay tuned for our earlier shows. Like I said, we will be doing more bi-weekly shows because since the semester's starting, we are very busy, but we will still be here. So don't you worry, everyone. We will still be.
You might see us with bags. You might.
Oh, sorry, John. We always
No,
keep
no. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
I was going to say, if anyone would like us to talk about any specific topics, we're always interested in what you guys would like us to cover. So our DMs are always open. So slide on in.
Yes. Yeah, you might see us with bags under our eyes from being so tired from all of our classes, but we'll still be active with you guys, and we really want to share all of our experiences with you. We want to share your experiences, and we want to just keep giving our tips and tricks that we've learned along the way and that we're still learning.
Right.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.